Welcome. My name is Lonneke Driessen and I work for the Open Charge Alliance, a non-profit organization in the Netherlands. It is my pleasure to present to you today the current status of international standardization of charging protocols. And due to the current travel restrictions between the Netherlands and Korea, this is a pre-recorded presentation. We hope that as soon as the travel restrictions are ceased, we will be able to visit you in person in Korea soon. But for now, this pre-recorded presentation will have to suffice. When we discuss charging protocols for EV charging, basically we mean the protocols between the electric vehicle and the charging station, and the protocols between the charging station and the charging station management system. So firstly, there are several widely used protocols for the communication between the electric vehicle and the charging station, and they are listed here on this slide. So first of all, most widely used is the IEC 61851, which is basically a standards group because it includes for AC charging the standard for type 1 and type 2, and for DC charging it consists of CHAdeMO, but also CCS. There is also a more recent standard called ISO 15118. -2 is the version that was published in 2014, and currently work is being done on an update, which is currently still a draft, -20, and hopefully this version will be published later this year. But the focus of my presentation will be around the standard between a charging station and a charging station management system called OCPP. OCPP stands for Open Charge Point Protocol. The Open Charge Point Protocol is governed by an industry alliance called the Open Charge Alliance, or short OCA. The goal of OCA is to help the EV charging industry accelerate and do well, and we are a non-profit foundation under Dutch law. We continuously develop OCPP based on the demands and the needs of the industry, and we also incorporate a lot of field experience. So whenever members learn something from the field, they share that learnings with us so we can improve the protocol for everybody. What is very important to us is that OCPP is freely usable, freely downloadable, it's open, it's patent and royalty free, and there are no licensing barriers to using the standard at all. OCPP as a name is trademark protected, and there is a copyright on the standard itself to make sure that there is only one OCPP, and that's the OCPP of the Open Charge Alliance. Not everybody uses a standard, and not everybody uses OCPP, and there are still vendors who use their own proprietary protocol. They believe that this proprietary protocol, of course, serves their interests perfectly, and they can control how the protocol works and what gets included. So we understand that there are still vendors who prefer their own protocol. The Open Charge Alliance, however, believes in an open standard, and there are basically 4 reasons why we believe in an open standard. So first of all, we believe that open standards are better standards and are broadly supported because ideas and solutions are shared, they are challenged, they are improved upon by each other, and finally they are adopted and supported by everybody because everybody has had the opportunity to have a say in what happens. The second reason is that open standards, we believe, are good for competition because everybody can join and everybody can compete. We believe that that makes companies do better. The third reason why we believe open standards are our preferred solution is that they are good for innovation. When you are a new entrant, maybe from a different industry, you can also join and you can bring in your ideas and your capabilities and help improve another sector. And the fourth reason is very simple. We believe that open standards are good for exports because when you develop a product or a service, you can very easily offer that to other regions in the world where it's also being used. And that makes it for vendors more attractive because with the same investment they have more market. When companies operate a charging network, they prefer to use a standard, and in some cases OCPP, because it allows them to select their charging station vendors. Not all charging networks are built all at once, so most of the time charging networks start with a few charging stations, and over time, during many years, they add more and more charging stations. And when using an open protocol, you can every time select the best vendor for your network. But also, if you are developing charging stations, open standards are also of interest to you, because once you have a charging station that complies to the standard, you can then very easily sell it to other charging networks. The OCPP community is global, and we don't know exactly who uses OCPP and where. The one thing that we do keep track of is the number of times the OCPP protocol is downloaded from our website and to which countries. And to date, we know that the protocol has been downloaded to 155 countries, to more than 72,000 individual IP addresses. This does not mean that they all use OCPP, but at least it means that they know about it, they've read it, and it may have inspired them in their product development. As I mentioned, anybody can download OCPP and use it, but you can also choose to become an OCA member. And the reason to do that is, with your participants fee, you support the foundation itself, but more importantly, you are able to contribute to the protocol itself or to the certification program, so you can include your needs into the protocol. At the moment we have 199 members, spread across many continents. Most participants come from Europe, but we also have a significant portion of Asian and North American OCA participants. 9 participants are Korea-based companies. Many of them are operational internationally, but their roots are founded in Korea. Not all OCA members actively contribute to the specification, and we estimate at the moment that around 60 of the participating companies actively contribute to the specification, in writing the specification. But this is where we are now. I would like to take a small step back to see the origin of OCPP. So how did it start? ELAT-NL started OCPP back in 2009 when they wanted to set up a multi-vendor charging network in the Netherlands, and they asked for a standard, and back then there was none. So they decided to start a standard themselves, OCPP. ELAT-NL is a non-profit knowledge and innovation center in the field of smart charging infrastructure, and we were founded in 2009 by the Dutch electricity grid operators. From day one, we published the protocol because we thought it might benefit others, and after a while so many companies were using it and contributing to the specification that ELAT decided that it was better to hand over the protocol OCPP to a neutral organization called the Open Charge Alliance, and the Open Charge Alliance was founded in 2014. This timeline has a bit more detail. The first version of the protocol, OCPP 1.2, was published in 2010, followed by 1.5 in 2012, and after the founding of the Open Charge Alliance in 2015, the version 1.6 was published. And every time we included what we had learned and what all the OCPP users had learned. In 2016, we added a conformance test tool, so implementers could check if their implementation was actually accurately conform the protocol. And since that industry then, but also still, there is so much development, a new version of the protocol was published in 2018 called OCPP 2.0. One important improvement of OCPP 2.0 was the inclusion of security, cybersecurity, and since it was so important, we decided to also add the same security requirements to OCPP 1.6. So that's why in 2018, together with the publication of OCPP 2.0, we also published a security update for 1.6 called Security Edition 1. In 2019 we opened the certification program for OCPP 1.6, and I have more information about that later. And in 2020, based on a couple of years of field experience, we improved on OCPP 2.0 and we published OCPP 2.0.1. And also there were some slight security improvements, so we also updated the OCPP 1.6 security white paper, which is now called edition 2. Currently in 2021, today, we are finalizing our testing tool for OCPP 2.0.1 and adding the OCPP 2.0.1 to the certification program. So this summer, the certification program and the testing tool for OCPP 2.0.1 will also be available. A little bit more detail about the different versions that you can choose from, because as I said, you can choose 1.6, you can choose 2.0.1, and it depends on your situation which one you prefer. So first of all, 1.6, as I mentioned, was published in 2015, but it also means that the functionalities are based on the industry's needs in 2015. And of course, we are now in 2021. There are no more new developments on this version, but of course we do errata maintenance. So whenever someone suggests a clarification, of course we do errata management. There is a generic data transfer mechanism in 1.6, so you can add custom features into OCPP 1.6. And if you'd like to see how, there is a white paper published on our OCA website. Occasionally, when there is a large industry demand, we publish a white paper describing in a standardized way how you can use the data transfer mechanism to update OCPP 1.6. And two examples of that are using ISO 15111 plug and charge with OCPP 1.6, that is a white paper, and the other one are OCPP and the California pricing requirements, that has also been published as a data transfer method. We have interoperability test events twice a year for OCPP 1.6. As I mentioned, there is a conformance testing tool available and there is a certification program available for OCPP 1.6. So if you look at the functionalities in OCPP 1.6 and that is sufficient for your use, it is a good standard to choose. The more recent version is OCPP 2.0.1. The first version was published in 2018 and the errata release, as we call it, 2.0.1 was published in 2020. And this is the basis for future development, so new features are added to this version. Of course, we also have errata maintenance, and for your information, the current development topics on 2.0.1 are vehicle to grid, very important, advanced networking if you have more complex topologies to manage. We are working together with fueling stations to work on the integration of OCPP 2.0.1 charging stations into the fueling station ecosystem. Same goes for battery storage. So if you want to include battery storage into a charging network, how could that work? Of course, support for the ISO 15118-2, so the new version of ISO 15118. And of course, very excitingly, is the megawatt charging system. So the large volumes of EV charging, we are also working on including that into this new version. We will publish these new developments as application notes to 2.0.1. And of course, they will be incorporated in future OCPP 2.x versions as well. In the meantime, when you implement OCPP 2.0.1, you also have some customization options. So you can customize your OCPP 2.0.1 implementation for your specific needs. And that's also explained in a white paper how you can do that. Like with 1.6, we have interop events, testing events twice a year. And as I mentioned, we are working on a testing tool which is available this summer, and we are including this in the certification program, also available this summer. So if you need more features for future development, OCPP 2.0.1 is a very good choice. At the moment it's the new version, so there are not that many vendors who have it at the moment, but of course the market is developing really fast, so that will change rapidly. For certification services, we have independent testing laboratories. So on this map you see the 5 that we have at the moment. We have a lab in North America by DECRA. We have 2 labs in Europe, in the Netherlands, one of DECRA and one of DNVGL. For the South Asian market, we have a lab in Singapore, also of DNVGL. And in Korea, we have a specific Korean testing lab here in Seoul by KSGA. The certification services are identical globally. So if you certify at one lab, your certificate is valid all across the world. So you only need to visit one of these labs. And as I mentioned, the certification for 1.6 has been available since 2019, and this summer we will add 2.1. If you go for certification, you don't have to certify everything, and this slide briefly explains for OCPP 1.6, if you are a CSMS or a charging station management system, you have to implement all the features of OCPP 1.6 that are mandatory. For a charging station, you can choose to either only implement the core, and all the other functional blocks that are stated here in this graph are optional, so you can choose to implement them in your charging station certification. But to be really honest, if you in 2021 only implement OCPP 1.6 core, it is a very basic implementation. For OCPP 2.0.1, we have decided to take the same approach for the charging station in 1.6, which means that also a charging station management system and also a charging station can apply for certification for only the core, and subsequently, if they like, add certification for all the different blocks. So you can choose which part are relevant for you, and this will be very clearly stated on the certificate. So if someone provides you with a certificate, please check which parts are included and which parts are not included. Open Charge Alliance is a non-profit organization, and our only goal is to help the industry of EV charging move forward with OCPP, but we are not a formal standards development organization such as IEC or ISO or IEEE, and there are several more. If you look at this graph, you see that the 1.5 and 1.6 versions were developed over time, and since the development of OCPP 2.0.1, we have engaged in liaisons with both IEC and ISO. So for instance, at IEC there is standards work ongoing regarding the information exchange between the charging station and the back office, and the draft IEC standard is the draft 63110, and we have a liaison in place, and we have shared not only the use cases of OCPP, the information model with OCPP, to help advance this IEC standard. Secondly, of course, the ISO organization is working on ISO 15118, and since there is a very strong relation between ISO 15118 and the backend protocol, we have also set in place a liaison with ISO to make sure that OCPP and ISO 15118 are 100% aligned. As I mentioned, OCPP is a global standard, but not everywhere in the planet the requirements are exactly the same. And what is really important, that our OCA participants help us implement those regional requirements into the global specification. And in this slide you see 3 examples. A nice example is the California CTEP regulation, which are rules in California for showing information to the EV driver. Those rules are in place as of this year, and our members helped us make sure that OCPP, both 1.6 and 2.0.1, can conform to this specific California CTEP regulation. Another example is the German Eichrecht, which is about measuring values and the requirements around the measuring of the electricity consumption. And also our German members help us to best understand what is needed in Germany and how we can make sure that OCPP delivers on that promise. For Korea, to our understanding, this is also applicable. To our understanding, there are some specific domestic Korean requirements regarding payment methods, maybe regarding security. And we are very pleased that our Korean members are helping us see in what way we can make sure that OCPP can cover those requirements. It says here on the slide that there are regional requirements, but what we see is that, as an example, the California pricing requirements are currently applicable in California, but they are really forward thinking. So a lot of our members said, well, at the moment it's for California, we believe that these requirements are also of value to many other regions in the world. So even while the requirements are regional, they are very beneficial for other regions as well. So to conclude my presentation to you, we hope that my presentation has informed you. If there's more information that you'd like, please contact me. If you like to join OCA, please do, and not only help the Open Charge Point Protocol in general, but also help our Korean task force to make sure that the Korean requirements are 100% well represented with OCPP. Thank you.